I'm half Indian and, half German. I was, Dad was German, Mum Indian, and I was born, in India, in Amritsar, in the Punjab many years ago, in 1965. Dad was born into a very humble family in Germany. He qualified as a textile technician and was out in places like Japan and Australia and Burma and and India and all, selling machinery to little startup businesses. And he stayed at a guest house that my grandmother was was running in Amritsar. And first laid eyes on my mum when she was 16, he was 18. He always says it was love at first sight, and a few years later they got married. And for a German to marry an Indian at that time, in the sort of late 50s, early 60s, was not what it is today. It was quite something. My grandmother was amazing. I mean, she really was what I describe as a force of nature. Married for love, married outside her religion, very brave decisions for a woman to take, and then widowed very young with 4 children to feed, and decided that she was going to open up the family home and turn it into a business, turn it into a sort of a B&B. She taught me so much about the power of education, the importance of tolerance, the importance of courage, just, I don't think I'd be what I am today without having seen someone like that do it so courageously and so naturally. I was schooled in the Philippines. I was there till I was 18 at an international school. My grandmother and my parents said to get a good education you should go either to the States or to Europe. And at that time, the power of the European community with a German passport, I had the opportunity to live and study and work in the UK. And I applied to the LSE and was fortunate enough to get in and moved to London as an 18-year-old in 1983. I always felt law would be a very good foundational degree, predominantly one because it was hard and I'm attracted by things that are hard. I thought it was a great platform for, if you look at folks who do law, they go into all sorts of areas, politics, business, obviously the legal profession, but many different things. And then finally I had this, I've always had this big belief that the law is about, first of all, using language beautifully. I think the law really teaches you to be articulate and to be a good communicator. And ultimately, it's also about helping people, solve problems and make agreements and stick to obligations and make things happen. I remember one day actually coming in, it's a stupid anecdote, but wearing a trouser suit, and the partner I was working for turning to me and saying, the clients prefer skirts, so could you please not do that again? And I'm thinking, really? So, why? I'm going to, dress the way I want, I'm going to be who I am, sort of thing. But I would say in terms of career progression, honestly, I didn't ever feel really that I'd had big obstacles, and the world was changing, business was changing so much at the time. It's fantastic starting in private practice because you have that opportunity to see the broad range of different types of law and also different types of clients, right, and issues, and it's just an incredible training ground. But I would say pretty early on I felt with my interaction with clients that I just have this, I wanted to be part of the fabric and the family of an organization. Beverages, alcohol beverages in particular, was a fantastic industry to be in. I mean, I think you know, firstly, very global, right? So the opportunities that I had in my career to, you know, to move around, to live in different countries and to deal with different cultures. I mean, we made products which were wonderful in that they were present at lots of wonderful events, particularly sporting events, you know, parties or other things, but also a huge responsibility as an organization to make sure that your, you know, products were sold, marketed, distributed, you know, in the right way. For many decades, frankly, the majority of consumers were male. I mean, we're seeing actually a real sort of sea change in that, I think, which also tracks sort of the growth and the independence of women and their earning power and all of that. But it was for many years very male, and I was, you know, the only woman on a management team or sitting around the table of the board of directors. In beer, very often it was incredibly valuable because, you know, at many of those tables we wanted to understand the female consumer, so I could bring a different perspective. I remember early in my career, I mean, people would make really outrageous comments like, oh, well, that's really interesting, but you're lucky you haven't got dark skin. And I'd be like, well, what does that mean? Like my mum does, you know? Whereas fast forward, I think 30 years in my career, the world is just so much of a much more cosmopolitan global place now, where a lot of young people today are like me, right, in terms of a mixed sort of background. And I think what's fantastic is the reaction is much more, you know, oh gosh, the richness of it, and tell us about your background, or, you know, what was it like growing up in India, or, you know, those sorts of things, which I think shows progress. He was a lawyer as well. He specialized in matrimonial law. And it involved Richard giving up his job, moving countries, and requalifying in the US in order to be able to work. And I remember from the get-go, he said to me, you know, this is such a fantastic opportunity for you. We can't say no. It was a massive inconvenience for him. But he said, you know, let's do it because it's the right thing for us. You know, it's not, and let's do it. And with all our moves, that has sort of very much been his approach. And I guess it takes a massive amount of confidence, particularly in a man. Natasha was little. I got, you know, the biggest bet in my career, the role I was offered at Anheuser-Busch InBev, which was to be based in Belgium at the time, and Natasha was 3. And he said to me, he said, you know, you're always going to be more ambitious than me, you're always going to get paid more than me, you're always going to be just a better lawyer than me. But with this role, it's going to be crazy. We've got to move countries. You're going to be traveling a lot. It's going to be very stressful. You're going to have to dedicate your time to it. So I am going to give up my career at this point in time, and I'm going to perform the very important job of raising our daughter, you know, and running our home, so that you can do what you need to do for the family and for your career. When we told actually number of our friends, right, that, you know, these were the choices that we were making, and it was really bizarre. I think a lot of his more hard-charging male friends actually made comments like, oh my gosh, you're really brave, you know, aren't you going to feel sort of slightly emasculated by your wife, you know, and I mean, really ridiculous comments. Richard, not only has he been present at every single important event, you know, for Natasha throughout her 19 years, but he's also, you know, a qualified rugby coach, tennis coach, football coach, semi-professional photographer, and now really is a sort of driving force behind our a little family foundation that we've set up that's dedicated to building schools and libraries for predominantly women and young girls in Asia. I think that the in-house profession has probably been more supportive of women in the workplace, or lawyers, female lawyers in the workplace, than private practice. You know, for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think one, the fabric of organizations is that they are, you know, are set up to, one, have a commitment to diversity because it's not just the right thing to do, but it makes business sense because a large part of their consumer or their customer base is diverse, so they need that thinking within organizations. Whereas the flip side with private practice, I believe, is that they don't have the ability to provide perhaps the same flexibility that companies do, frankly, because the clients are so demanding. You know, and in many cases they're paying big fees. They're often working with a law firm because they're in crisis or they're doing something which is time critical, and the need to have not just lawyers but particular individuals available 24/7 or during very antisocial hours. I try as a general counsel, well, just as a human being, not just as a woman, but to try to be sensitive to those tensions. You know, hang on team, do we really need this over a weekend, or do we have to have that phone call at 10 o'clock at night? I thought I was done with in-house work, and I was going to do some Ned roles and focus on our charity and other things, and I realized I really missed being part of a management team, and I really missed my team, and I missed learning, right? I just missed learning new things, and BT kind of hit all those things. One, it was learning about an industry I knew nothing about, you know, in the intellectual challenge, you know, around that, and an industry that's so dynamic, right, and and it's about the future and it's changing every day. You know, I get my energy from people and just being surrounded by all the next generation of lawyers, right, that's sort of coming through, and just being able to help them make the best of their careers and the best choices in life in, you know, whatever small way I possibly can, and it's all, yeah, love it, living the dream.